Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vanny is about Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, and smash, shall we? This time we're covering set 10 Dragon Empire Gandiva. So this, in my opinion, is probably one of the most talked about decks I've ever seen, because every time I go onto YouTube and look into the Card Fight Vanguard stuff, apparently this deck is everywhere and about how it's broken and it's consistent because it gets resources, it gets bound cards, it gets numbers, and I'm here to tell you that even with my version of this build, that is sadly true. I think Gandiva is going to break the meta one way or another, and I had no choice but to build a meta-breaking deck. So, whew, this is going to be fun for me. Let's go ahead and get this started, shall we? And we can see what I mean, because this deck's stupid. And remember, I'm not even playing it the smart way. I'm playing it my way, and it's still fucking broken. So first up, we have Scarlet Flame Recruit Barkish. Great Zoe boost by Kishiosis K base. All around opponent wins second draw card. Stands turn. This spot is just a free draw if you win second. All around, it's interesting. I really thought the arts were of Gandiva and Eugene were gonna be similar, because Gandiva's starter, if you line it up with Eugene, they actually parallel each other perfectly. But then the rest of the line is not paralleling, sadly. But that's something really cool they could have done, because the starters parallel each other really nicely. But anyways, yeah. Cool card. I'm biased towards Gandiva over Eugene because Gandiva has arrows, and we all know arrows are my favorite weapon. So yeah, one of back cards in the right deck. Technically, you don't need this in the right deck, but might as well go with the full line, right? Then we have Overtrigger and Dragon Deity, King of Resurgence, Drag Veda. Great Zoe boost 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, you may only have one Overtrigger in your deck, and it reveals a trigger card, draw a card, choose one of each, I guess, from the turn. And if you reveal it during draw check, activate its additional effect, which you can choose one of your Vanguards and stand it. All around, pretty powerful. You know, you guarantee to get the 1 million to draw, regardless of if you damage check it or drive check it. So someone's either getting hit this turn, or someone's not getting hit this turn. And then, not to mention the fact, if you draw check, you get to stand your Vanguard. And a deck that already can get double critical while your opponent's at grade 2, get a fuck ton of numbers, being able to restand the Vanguard is probably the other bit of pressure that's guaranteed to kill your opponent. Like, this deck, it genuinely puts on the pressure as fast as it can, and even if you don't, you could still put on the pressure as slow as you want, and you could probably still kill your opponent relatively easily. So yeah, Drag Veda is basically the end-all be-all thing, where if your opponent's surviving the rest of Drag Veda, or not Drag Veda, of Gandiva, some way, somehow, Drag Veda is going to be the thing that kills them. So one of Drag Veda. Then we have our normal triggers. First, we run 3 draws in Flare Veil Dragon. Great Zoe boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Continues guard, so if your opponent's Vanguard's a great 3 guys, 5k shield. You know, 10k shield is pretty nice. This deck, if your opponent somehow finds resistance, like if they find the open space in your very small, like, open space of the guard, then yes, they can pierce through, and that's where the 10k shields are useful. But until then, you're basically bullying the hell out of your opponent with an immovable fortress. So 3 of the draw trigger helps increase your hand cards to, you know, at least get your pieces out that you want to bully your opponent with, that retire and bind. But then at the same time, it also helps with that little bit of guard power in case your opponent finds the will to fight back, even though they should already give up considering they see you're playing Gandiva. Then we have 4 fronts and Blaze Mane and Parama. This is where I choose to play stupidly. I know very damn well this deck can be stupid if you pull 8 crits, but I like to pull fronts just to, you know, fuck with people. Great Zoe boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Front triggers guard circle, plus Vanguard's a great 3 for 5k shield. You know, 20k shield is pretty nice. Again, it helps with the guarding power. Also, you know, in a deck that can already get a fuck ton of numbers to front row with a Persona Ride, and then you sack a front on top of it, your opponent's just like, okay, is there anything else you want to do? You want to fucking sack the over? I'm already dead anyways. I can't fucking guard anything. The front triggers just salt upon wounds at this point. So yeah, 4 of the front. It's more of just to put salt on the wounds, because honestly the deck does everything else it needs with just the other triggers, and then without this, but because you have to run 16 triggers, might as well fucking rainbow and just bully your opponent in every way possible. So 4 fronts. And we have 4 copies of Burning Flow Dragon. Great Zoe boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger auto rear at the end, about a boost to put this unit to soul, choose when reach, because 2k for the turn. Okay, this deck, if you have to, keyword being if you have to, can run into a soul problem. Again, if you have to, it will run into a soul problem. But otherwise, it's a 15k shield and a critical, meaning you can sack it, and when you're already bullshit numbers, whether you get the front or not, it just puts even more pressure on your opponent. So, you know, might as well run the 4 of crits, and again, if you have to, send it to soul. So, yeah, 4. But the 2k does nothing. Be surprised about that. And then we have our 4 heals in White Light Dragon Parasoles. Great Zoe boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Standard heal, no special about it. I don't really like the effect heals very much. They're too situational in my mind, because they're normally 10k shields and they're only 25k shields in very specific situations. Therefore, meaning that most of the time they're only 10k shields, and I rather have the consistent 15k shield than the random 10 to 25. So take that as you will. If you want to run the counter heals, go ahead. But 4 regular heals for me is just good enough. Then move on to our grade 1s. First up, we run 3 copies of one of the best support cards I've ever seen, whether it was meant for Gandiva or not. And I'm biased towards this card because it has a sword and it's on fire. Swordsman of Crimson Scales Barnea. I swear to God, if how you pronounce that is Barney, I'm gonna flip my table. 3 copies at it, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto rearguard, and then about this unit boosted anything. If any player's rearguard was killed this turn, whether it's your own or your opponent's, bind this unit face down and draw a card. Great, so not only is this thing just a free draw, but it binds itself, which gives Gandiva more firepower, pun intended, because if you don't remember, Gandiva gets benefits from cards being bound face down. Gandiva, in my mind, is the example of what happens when Bushy is done with people complaining about, oh, this deck doesn't do this deck doesn't do that, it should have this to fix this problem. Yeah, guess what, people? Shut the hell up. Bushy gave you what you wanted, and now suddenly everyone's afraid of it. This is what you asked for. Deal with it. 3 of Barnea. It's free draw and power engine. Then we have 4 copies of a card that people roasted the fuck out of in Discord, Scarlet Flame Bow Soldier Basen. And by roasted, I mean they use this to roast Nirvana because, yeah, fire arrow over here. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto, back row, rear guard circle. Doesn't have to be back row center for whatever reason. When your Vanguard with Gandiva and its card name attacks into anything, if your Bind Zone has 3 or more cards in it, whether they're face down or face up, bind this card face down and countercharge 1. Okay, you can see the reason why they roast is because this came out before Mirrors and we still didn't have a countercharger for Nirvana yet, so basically the Gandiva in its first set, even though Gandiva didn't need a countercharger, got a countercharger, and then Nirvana did eventually get one, but still, this card is just good. It doesn't matter what grade your opponent's at, it doesn't matter what your Vanguard's attacking into. As long as your Vanguard's a Gandiva and this thing's in the back row, you can bind it to countercharge 1, and again, it gets you power, it gets you resources, and it's not a once per turn, so if you have multiple of them in the back row, they can all just go off at once. 4 of this thing. This deck can technically run into a counter boss problem if you all-in rushed your opponent with 2 very specific cards, this being one of them, and it immediately fixed that problem by this being one of them. This deck has had problems, and they could have left them, but no. Bushy was like, let's just avoid the hatred and then just fix it right now. 4 Bossen, free counter charge, free power. I can't argue anything for this of why you shouldn't run it. Then we run 4 copies of Sparkle Rejector Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 0/6k base, contains Sentinel. You may have it to 4 cells in deck, and always put on guard circle. Choose whenever it cannot be hit in a battle. And if your hand is 2 or more cards, choose a card from hand, discard it. Standard PG, no specified, basically means if this only one of the cards in your hand, you can place it on guard circle. You don't have to discard one, which is great, because that means you can get as aggressive as you want in the early game, which is something you don't need to fucking do, because the deck itself is aggressive in the early game. Again, the only way you're going to be aggressive is if your opponent has given you nothing to work with. If they've given you no rear guard this entire game, then you have to drop everything. And even then, you're probably gaining more from this than your opponent is. So, 4 of Sparkle Rejector. If your opponent finds the ability to counterattack you, this is pretty much going to shut it down with the biggest middle finger I've ever seen. I tell you what, I have played against Gandiva, I have played with Gandiva, and I feel pity for anyone that has to fight it. Because again, I've been the one playing it, and I've been the one on the opposing end of it, and it is not fun on either. I mean, it's fun of being the side playing it, but it's sad knowing that your opponent can't really do anything. 4 of Sparkle Rejector, man, this deck reminds me of Chaos, but at least in Chaos, they didn't have the illusion of hope or free will. Here, they have the illusion, and they think they can win, and then you shoot them down in the head with a bunch of fucking arrows. And then we have our last grade 1. Speaking of more arrows, 1 of in the ride deck, of none in the main deck, of Scarlet Flame Bow Soldier, Argyredo. Now, I gotta say this, though. This is one of my favorite grade 1s in terms of ride deck, not just because he has an arrow, even though that's partially biased, and that is true. He is one of my favorites because of that. But also his actual skill, having 2 alternate skills, which is what I love. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, and has 2 skills, continues Vanguard. If your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, when you would ride Scarlet Flame Bow General Deperno from your ride deck, aka the grade 2 of the ride deck, you can ride without discarding a card from your hand. Okay, normally I hate those skills, but because it has an alternate skill, it makes it even better, and that alternate skill being auto when it's rode upon, if your opponent has 2 or more rear guards, you may call this card to rear guard. Great, so it's not a mandatory call, so if you want to keep your soul because your opponent may not give you rear guards, then great, even though they've already given you 2 for this to even go off, then great, you can use it to get an extra rear guard out and fight back with them. Or if they didn't give you rear guards because they're probably smart, you can just ride to grade 2 for free. I love this. I wish Bushy did this more, where they gave alternate ride line skills to cards, because I think that's fun, and it allows them to make generic skills look less generic. So 1 of our Jetto in the ride deck, he's just a solid grade 1, and I think his art is cool, and I think his ability is great, so 1 of none in the main deck. Then we have 4 copies of Meteor Flare Dragon, starting off for grade 2s. Grade 2 in a set 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when it's placed on rearguard circle until end of turn, all your opponent's rearguards lose their continuous abilities and cannot gain them back. And then by counterblasting 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and combat it and kill it. All around pretty solid because it can nullify things that have resist, because it doesn't specifically target a unit, it targets everything. So unless that unit's specific skill says it cannot be affected by other things, you can automatically get rid of those abilities and they're stuck without them for the rest of the turn. And then by counterblasting 1, you can kill off whatever the fuck pesky thing is on the opponent's board, which is great. And then continues rearguard during your turn. If your opponent's vanguard's a grade 3 guard and they have no rear guards, it gets plus 10k power. So a 20k base is pretty nice, especially the fact that this deck can nuke rear guards out the wall fucking zoo. This is what Eugene should have been outside of set 1, and it wasn't, and it just takes full advantage of it. It kills things really quickly, and being a 20k base and being able to nullify resist just makes this card a really good beat stick and just all around a good support card for the deck. So easy for this is kind of the only reason that this deck can get to a counterblast problem. I mean, because it's just an extra counterblaster, but there's no other retirers that I'd rather run. So 4 of Meteor Flare, and I want everything that isn't these two to be a fucking retire card, so take that as you will. Then we have 4 copies of Scarlet Flamebow General Rugiant, aka one of the cards you can abuse the fuck out of if your opponent doesn't give you rear guards to kill. Grade 2 NSF5k shield, 10k base. Auto when it's placed on rearguard circle. If you have a Vanguard Gandiva in its card name, by counterblasting 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and murder it. And if you did not kill something, draw a card and choose a card from your drop zone, bind it face down. And this is where the problem starts. So being a counterblast 1 to draw a card, counterblast 1 to either kill something or draw a card and bind something face down. I know what Bushy was trying to do here. They were trying to be like, okay, if the easiest way to play around Gandiva is to just not give them rear guard. So therefore, if we give them an ability like this to benefit from your opponent not being able to kill rear guards, then it's going to be fine and it'll make the deck balanced. I think Bushy didn't realize that making these non-once per turns became an issue, because either this game was on camera or it was off camera. There was a game where there weren't rear guards to kill, and I had this, and I had still Gunna as a grade 3, and I called them both down, and I got from 0 to 6 cards in my bind zone in 5 seconds with nothing to kill, because I just comboed off them. And then I still won that game, even though I dropped everything except for 1 card in my hand, which was a PG. And I didn't even have to use the PG. I just took every attack the next turn, because I was at 3 damage, and I drove check a heal. Yeah, this deck is stupid. I mean, believe it or not, it just does what it needs to do, and it does it fucking well. Like, replacing itself, binding a card, or getting to kill a rear guard, or in some cases doing both, depending, it's just dumb. There's no way your opponent can stop this deck once it starts going. So, for Vrugent, either your opponent makes your job harder by, not calling rear guards and forces you to not be able to use Gandiva, but at the same time they just let you replace this card, or they make your job easier and they just let you kill rear guards and they just lose defensive power and aggressive power at the same time. 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of the reason this deck can get into a counterboss problem. Drag Ritter, and I'm going to fuck up this name so far, Al-Fuckar. I'm just going to call it Al-Fucker, because I know that's part of all of us are thinking. Anyways, I love this thing's hair, and I love the sword. It looks fucking cool as all hell. Grade 2 NSF 5k shield, 10k base. Auto rearguard when your Vanguard Gandiva in its card name attacks a grade 3 or greater Vanguard. Counterblast 1 and bind this unit face down. Look at top 7. Choose up to 1 grade 3 less unit from among them. Call it to rearguard and shuffle deck. You know what the best part about this is? I love how the day that the countercharger came out, people were talking about how, oh, you can use double of these things, so Gandiva gets 5 attacks, especially with the big numbers to front row. That's going to be deadly, except you're going to run into a counterboss problem. And then that same day this thing came out, and then that problem was immediately rectified. So you just call 2 of these, you call 2 of these, and you put them in the same column. You swing twice with big bullshit numbers. Vanguard swings, you counterblast 2 for both of these, and then you call top 5, or technically you can do it in any order where you do this one, or you do one of these first, and then you do one of these first, and then you just do it again in that same order. And then you being able to call 2 more units, so you get 5 attacks, and then you got at least a guaranteed plus 8 off Gandiva skill, because you bound a total of 4 cards in that one go. Oh, this deck can do stupid shit. All around, Al-Fuckar is really great. It fucks over anyone that pretty much walks in its path because, again, bind, numbers, multi-attack, stupid 5-attack combo you can do with this thing basically and make it free. And there's no arguments I can make for that. So 4 of. I swear, Bushy probably had right intentions of building this deck and then just didn't realize the potential that it actually had by doing so. Take that as you will. Or Bushy knew exactly what they were doing. They were just like, fuck it, let's just see what happens. Let chaos reign for 5 minutes. Then we have our last grade 2, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of Scarlet Flame Bow General D Panel. I gotta say, in my opinion, this is my least favorite of the archers because, I don't know, he just feels like he's overdone. Like, he feels like he's too good for everyone else. Either way, grade 2 units at 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when is brought upon by a unit with Gandiva in its card name. Choose one of your vanguards, and the cost of that unit's original counter act ability is reduced by 1 counterblast end of turn. Okay, again I say, Gandiva technically had a counterblast problem in the form of this if you just use 2 of them a turn. It was rectified by this to the point where the only other counterblaster in the deck was straight up this, and then Gandiva himself, and then this literally reduced Gandiva's skill to 0 considering its skill is counterblast 1. I don't get what like Bushy's paranoia was. If this was paranoia, Bush was like, let's try something new, or let's genuinely let Chaos reign for 5 minutes straight. Because it feels like Gandiva was given everything it needs to win from the get-go, because Bushy was like, you know what, fuck it. Let's just see what happens. Either way, Depanel's just a good one-of ride deck card. Like, being able to make its main grade 3 fucking free for its skill that can nuke 3 rear guards at once is stupid, and there's nothing else I could say about this, and the only thing I can say about this is it doesn't have a rear guard skill. But honestly, this is one of the best ride lines I've ever seen, to the point where it doesn't need a fucking rear guard skill. So one of in the ride deck of D-Panel. Let's just let Chaos reign and see what else happens. And move on to our grade 3s. First up, we have 4 copies of Scarlet Flame Bow General Sturgunna, or as its original Japanese name was on the Discord translation, Scarlet Flame Bow General Still Gunna, as in I'm still gonna wreck your ass, I'm still gonna fuck your ass, I'm still gonna kill your ass. Something along those lines. Anyways, grade 3 turn persona, 13k base. Auto when it's placed on rear guard circle. If you have Vanguard Gandiva in its card name, Soul Boss one and bind another rear guard face down. Great! More rear guard binding! Choose one of your opponent's rear guards, kill it, and then if you do not kill a card, draw a card and choose a card from your bind zone, or choose a card from your drop zone and bind it. Again, I say, this deck can get power off the Waffle. You know what's stupid? This thing isn't even a double rare, it's not a rare, it is a common. After I put this into this slideshow for the deck profile, I had to go back and be like, wait, they either changed the skill or this thing's a double rare, because there's no way in fuck this thing's a common. And it's a common with this skill. This was just pulled from the fandom not even 20 minutes ago. Why? I don't believe. By the way, it's Friday, April 7th, 7:53, by the way. If you want to like the time zone of when I did this. It's so good because, again, if your opponent doesn't give you rear guards, you can just call this Soul Blast 1, bind another rear guard face down, so that's 1 rear card bound, and then you can draw a card because you couldn't kill something, and then you bind the card you Soul Blasted. And because it's only once per turn, you can just call another one and do the same thing, have a total of 4 cards bound in one go. This thing is stupid. And then you can just call this, and then you get the fucking other one. Like, that's literally how I did it. I called 2 of these, and I called this on top of the last one, and I got 5 cards in bind pretty fucking easily. This is stupid. This card is good. It's so easy to use, because either you get a guaranteed bind, and then you get cards in drop zone to bind with either his own effect or with Gandiva's effect, and then you can kill rear guards or just bind and draw anyways. It's good. There's no arguments I can make for this. 4 of. It's just great. The pressure you can put on this deck is amazing. Oh, whoops, and then finally, we have the star of the show, the thing that fucking breaks this game, Scarlet Flame Martial Dragon Gandiva. Grade 3, turn drive persona, 13k base, auto Vanguard, when your opponent's rear guard's retired during your turn, choose a card from your drop zone, and you may bind it face down. Okay, you're not required to, but there's no fucking reason you're not going to. That is a free bind every time something is killed this turn. And then continues Vanguard, during your turn, all your front row units get plus 2k power for each face down card to your bind zone. And then if you have 5 or more face down, this unit gets a critical. I want this to be clear. None of that ability is restricted to your opponent being at grade 3. And again, I say, none of these abilities except for this one and this one are restricted to your opponent being at grade 3. Meaning you can go all in with the binding, and even when your opponent's at grade 2, and if you happen to get 5 or more, this thing, you get plus 10 to front row, and this thing's going to have an extra critical while your opponent's at grade 2. You know what's funny? Consistently, every time I've played this deck, I'll get 5 cards in my bind zone first grade 3 turn, and second grade 3 turn, I'll go from 5 to 15. That is plus 30k to the front row, and half those times I get a Persona Ride. That is 40k to the front row, and half of those times I get a front trigger. That is a total of 50k to the front row. And the Vanguard has a crit. That is not even an over to pass. That is an over for a even. That is stupid. And then its other ability is Active Vanguard once per turn by counterblasting 1, or if its first grade 3 turn, thanks to this thing, it's fucking free, and choose up to 5 of your opponent's rear guards with different grades, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, and retire all the chosen units with the same grades as any of the revealed cards, and shuffle your deck. I'm sorry, what? This thing's skill is better than what it was on Discord originally, because on Discord originally, it was just choose up to, like, specific grades. Now let's just choose 5 fucking units. Cool. I mean, granted, it has to be different grades, but still. Anyways, choose all, kill all things with the same chosen grades of the revealed cards off your deck, and if you retired 1 or less units, draw a card to cover and drop some, bind it face down. So, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, like, if you kill multiple from this, you still bind 1 for each, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. So, like, if you kill 2, you still bind 2, but even if that wasn't the case, it barely slows down the deck. It doesn't stop it from getting 5 in bind zone quickly, it just makes it slightly harder to get it, and even then, harder is not a word that should be used. It just makes it more inconvenient, I guess, is what I could say. Either way, being able to, kill multiple units at once is fucking great. Like, half the time when I use this, I get either double kill, or I get 1 kill, or I get no kills. There's one time I got no kills, but most of the time it's either 1 or 2, because I typically pull, like, all grade 3s and 2 grade 2s, or grade 1s and grade 3s. I never pull, like, the grades that are actually on the board, or, like, all the grades that are actually on the board. I think I've pulled it off, like, twice, where I've gotten all the 3 kills, but, yeah, this card is stupid. It's just stupid. Kill things, bind a bunch, and if you don't get to bind, or you don't get to kill, you only get to kill 1 or less, draw a card and bind again. So not only do you, so say for example you did kill 1, you not only bind from this skill, but you get to bind again and draw a card. I cannot fathom who made this, but whoever did, I wish you had made this in set 1, because I originally was going to main Eugene, and then Nirvana took that place. If this is what Eugene would have been outright in set 1, I mean, granted, yes, Eugene would have been fucking broken outside of set 1, but if this is similar to what Eugene would have been in set 1, yeah, I probably would have stuck with Eugene. Now I'm sticking with this. I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. You see, this deck profile is lacking a specific thing, and that is my commentary about, like, how this deck works, how it could be different in meta competitively, but, like, even though I, like, rarely go into that, like, I'll say a joke or I'll do something about it, this isn't even something I can joke about, because it's, like, anything I would joke about, it already fucking does. It gets the resources, it gets the guarding power, even though it doesn't fucking need it. It beats the shit out of your opponent like they're a defenseless puppy that can't really do anything. It does everything. There's nothing I can say that it doesn't do. Like, even in this stupid build where I choose to run fronts over extra crits, it still gets a fuck ton of numbers to the point where literally even the over trigger isn't enough to block them outright. You have to damage check the over trigger to block them outright. So, there's nothing more I can say. But she has created it. They've created the ultimate monster, and I cannot wait to see where this goes next. I'm gonna end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us, follow Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to step your vanguards.